Great, thanks guys. So it's just ticking over 10:30 my end here, so I'm hoping we are good to go. Any stragglers coming in can obviously catch up, and I'll probably be looking to, well, I am recording this and I'll send this out to your inbox as well, which will help. All right, so let's get into it. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Today is obviously all about the running of a small group PT session. And look, there's two aspects I wanted to talk about in this key area. And the first one we're going to touch on today in this webinar is obviously the hands-on practicality of small group PT. And the other aspect is the behind-the-scenes stuff, which, as I say, we won't really touch on too much today because it's another, you could do a day's worth at least just on the, the back end of how do you promote, how do you market, how do you I suppose, structure your business around small group PT, but certainly getting the sessions themselves right and making sure that your clients love them is what today is all about. Now, if we look at small group PT, where it is in the industry at the moment, it's obviously tracking and trending quite a fair bit. We see the likes of obviously F45 coming through. Most of your corporate gym chains now offer some form of small group PT service. So even if you're not working for yourself as a PT, you have a job description if you're an instructor in those sort of facilities where you actually have to run the sessions on behalf of the company. So it's very popular, and this is obviously all off the back of CrossFit, which has made that high-intensity group community-based training so popular. And of course, on the flip side of that, our clients, it allows our clients to have a fantastic high-energy experience at, I won't say a minimum cost, but certainly a lower entry cost than what was originally out there as far as one-on-one PT and the likes of what their other options are. So it's definitely big, it's definitely popular, and there's a lot of scope for us as PTs to look to work smarter rather than harder. And I guess that's the key regarding small group PT for us as personal trainers. Okay, let's get into it. So a little bit of background about me, to make sure my clicker's working, which it's not. Helps if I turn it on, sorry. For those that don't know me, my name's Tristan Hill. I've been in the industry for 16 odd years now in various roles. Obviously started off as a PT myself and still do a few hours on the side for my faithfuls. Educator, mentored, manage as well. So I'm actually based out at Club Coops in Brisbane on the north side, and I help Ben out there. It's an independent club, but a great vibe to it. So I still like to try and keep my, my hat in the ring, so to speak, and see what's happening at grassroots, which allows me to do a bit of job when it comes to educating and mentoring. Wrote a book in February, which was very cool. Have had that on the market since and had a great response to it. It's something that I never thought I'd actually do, but it's certainly proven its worth, and I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to do it because it's really allowed me to give back in so many ways and to branch out to so many trainers, which has been awesome. So feel free to have a look at that if and when the time is right. So today should take about 60 minutes and even a little bit less, to be honest. And my promise to you here with this webinar is to share with you everything that I know and have experienced within small group PT that has worked for me, that hasn't worked, that I've seen other trainers and helped other trainers do from the running of their sessions, and obviously from a perspective of making sure that your sessions are also targeted. That's what we'll talk about today as well. Some of the stuff you'll know about, some of it is common sense that you just go, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer, but at the same time, it needs to be said, it needs to be reiterated. And for a lot of you, this webinar might just act as a great acknowledgement that you are on the right track and what you are doing is actually correct. And for others, you'll find some of the jigsaw pieces that I give you will sort of fill the holes that are missing in your current service. So that's what I'm certainly promising you today, and I hope you get out of it. All right. So 3 critical areas for small group PT success from a running perspective. So keep that in mind as well. I'm going to be talking the majority today about the actual practical running of the session and the design of the session. And the 3 key areas is obviously the delivery. So how do you present during the class? The design. So how do you design challenging yet achievable sessions, while at the same time is focused on your niche, your key area that you want to do small group PT in. There's no point in just having a small group PT service for anyone and everyone, because you can't cater during a session for anyone and everyone. You have to have specific classes. We'll get onto this in a sec. And of course, finally, I talk about variety and how it influences small group PT so hugely. It's a huge influencer towards your success of your business and also the retention of your clientele. So we'll go through that as well. Okay, so an overview of the first point, which was of course delivery. Now the 7 steps here are primarily actually based around the concept of energy. Now I have it as a standalone, but of course number 2 there is communication, and communication is going to affect your energy. Structure is obviously a little bit to the side. Knowing your clients and your exercises inside out. Cueing, not being a statue, and then of course building individual rapport relationships as well. So we'll get into each of these individually right now. So energy as a whole, obviously what I'm referring to here is the concept that when you present your session, you dictate as the instructor the energy of the room and that session. Now, of course, we look at someone like a group fitness instructor compared to a personal trainer that does majority one-on-one, and your poles apart regarding the running of those sessions. You've got the group fitness instructor that literally bounces off the walls and could probably, present the energy of 10 people in the room just via themselves, versus the one-on-one session, which again, yes, the environment is different, but all of a sudden, they're walking a little bit less, running a little bit less, they're not bouncing off the walls, they're a little more monotone and the likes of. And it's a key problem I see where PTs they want to jump into that small group PT realm, but they don't bring the intensity or the energy that you need to have with that type of session. They might lift 5–10%, but it's nowhere near enough to dictate what the market wants out of that type of session, especially when you're running, and I'm obviously assuming here for the most part, circuits, high intensity type stuff. Now, of course, your small group PT doesn't have to always be that, but for the large part of the market, that's what they want. So lift your energy. How you present in the room is critical. Make sure that you are jumping outside of your comfort zone, right? To the point where it should almost feel a little bit exaggerated. And I like to use the example of media, so TV in particular. TV presenters naturally have to lift just that little bit more, so that when we're watching them at the other end of the box, it just looks like they have a reasonable amount of energy. But if you saw them live, you would think the person was nuts. They're jumping up and down, and their volume is lifted, and they're going at 100 miles an hour. Grant Denyer on the game show is a classic example, right? So that energy there is what we're trying to dictate in a class environment as well. Communication. So communication comes in many ways, and obviously in these 7 steps, I talk about cueing, for example. Well, that obviously falls into communication as well. But the point I wanted to make here about the communication was trying to get away from that lowered tone, but also your tone and pitch. So making sure that you vary your tone and pitch at key times, something as simple as that has a massive influence again on your energy and how you deliver the session. It allows you to overemphasize key aspects, key cues, and underemphasize others that aren't maybe quite as critical. So make sure you're remembering to mix it up, lift your tone when you have to, and then dull it down when you don't necessarily need it. Structure. So regarding the structure of the session, how well does it flow? A classic example of this would be, at what point do you take your group through the circuit or the structure of the session? Do you warm them up, get them all hyped up, and then take them through the circuit? And then, of course, during that 5 minutes of explaining the circuit and taking through the exercises, the energy of the session has then gone dropped. Or do you have strategies in place? So, for example, when you are taking them through the circuit and how to do it, do you make sure that they act it out? Or you make sure they get to do some dummy reps during that explanation? So that way, of course, you are keeping the energy high, you're keeping them warm, and they're not flattening out before that first whistle blows. So making sure that that structure is correct so that at the end of the session, when the clients or your leads assess that session, they go, it wasn't disjointed, it wasn't stop-start, it just flowed really nicely, which again is just another piece of the jigsaw puzzle. You know, is the success of your business going to be dictated solely by this? No. But if you align more pieces than not, then when the client makes that assessment of their experience, they'll give you a massive thumbs up and they can't wait till they come back tomorrow. Right? So make sure that you know your session well and you know the structure of how it's going to operate. Let me just, if I have a mouse, I just wanted to check my chat. I think I might have a question. So yeah, Glenn, sorry, I'm just answering a few questions as we go here on the fly. Yes, of course, if you're the only one doing the exercises, the question was, obviously, I noted after my first small group session, I was the only one doing something. So yes, keep them moving. Absolutely is what I'm saying here, to keep the energy high during the session, especially that first intro bit. All right, know those exercises inside out. You guys need to know the what, why, how, when, all of the above of each of the exercises that you prescribe in your circuit. Right? What's it for? Right? How does it fit into the circuit you've chosen? Right? Where does it lie? What are the stresses? Right? How am I going to regress it, progress it? Right? And not only that, how am I going to progress it and regress it at the drop of a hat? Because my client is either finding it too hard or it's too easy. And we talk about regressions and progressions later as well, because it's pretty critical. So make sure you know the exercises inside out. You should know them like the back of your hand. What are the influences of not only that exercise, but the combination of exercises you're using? Because burpee chins followed by, you know, whatever, can be extremely stressful. So you need to know what it is that those stresses are going to place on your client. And if it's not suited to your group, then of course don't use it, or place it somewhere else in your circuit, for example. Cueing, coming back to another communication point here. And of course, this one is in and around the idea of your energy and how you present in the session. Now, the problem with cueing that I find that most PTs have is they don't cue enough. And it's hence why I've put in a nice big box there for you guys. Silence is the biggest killer of the energy of any session. As soon as we stop talking, the energy just drops. Doesn't matter if it's a webinar, a seminar, a training session, what it is. And so to give you an idea here, I've given you an example of a 45-second round. And I've got there 6 cues within 45 seconds. Now, some of them are obviously obvious, so there's a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and start. Always make sure you count in, but don't count out. So this is a key point as well. I'll explain myself in a second. So the 3, 2, 1 before they start, right, sends a rocket up their bum. It makes sure that they're set for the next round and they know where their exercise is and their piece of equipment, etc., etc. If you just go 10 seconds to go, guys, before we start, or 5 seconds, I guarantee they will fluff. And so that when you call start, you've lost 5 seconds in the round because they're getting themselves set to go. All right, once you've got that out, of course, then you are looking at your general cues. So I've got here a general group reminder or motivational cue. 5 to 10 seconds will pass, and then of course I've scanned the room. I've got an individual technical cue or another motivational cue if they're all going really well. So I'm singling out someone in that round to go chest up, head proud, Sammy, your hips are dropped, or whatever it might be. Give them a halfway cue, because if you're working off a time, clients love to know where they're at during the session or during that round. Helps with their own motivation, their own desire to push. Right? Number 5, another technical cue for an individual. So you're getting at least 2 individual cues there within one 45-second round. So then you've got at least 2 of your, however many you've got in your group, that know they're getting individual attention during that particular round. Number 6, give them a 5-second warning, or keep going, you've only got 5 seconds to go, type of cue. And then of course, number 7 there is the stop. Now at the start, I said count down, right, to the start, but don't count out. So now of course, the key cue around that is don't count out, because you don't want to go 3, 2, 1, because I guarantee you they'll stop at 3 and 2. If they know that they don't, or if they don't think they're going to get an extra rep out within the time that you start counting, they just won't do anything. So make them keep working until they hear that stop. All right, so that's cueing. The statue. So don't be a statue unless you want it to appear disinterested, bored, tired, or uninspiring. Right? You should never stand still during a session. If there's one advantage we have as PTs in small group over a fitness instructor, is we're not on a stage. We get to walk around. We get to run. We get to drop down onto our knees, onto our stomach. We get to jump up and down like a springboard. Right? And that, from an energy perspective, sends your session through the roof. It tells your members that you're engaged, you're living it there with them, and not flat as attack because you've been up since 6 a.m. and it's now a 6 p.m. session. All right, so make sure that you're moving. Very few times should you be staying still, right? Because it just says, well, yeah, I'm here, but I'm not really here. So between not communicating or being silent and standing still, it's a real killer. Build individual relationships. Now, I like this one. I want you, when you set your small group, you should be attempting to, right, talk to each person on a personal level. So if you've got a small group of 6, either before or after, you should be able to try and relate to them on a personal level at some stage. Right? And this is the personal aspect of small group PT. Now, of course, with small group PT, it's hard. You lose that individual connections with relationships with your clients. But if you can spend 2-3 minutes asking them, how's it at work? If you know they've got a new job, how are the kids? If they've got a new bub, how's the bub? Yada yada. It just connects with them and makes them know that you care. All right. So yes, it is a small group, but you still have that connection with each of the individuals. So you need to foster it. You need to keep building it. So have it set as part of your session delivery. They don't need to know this, of course, that you are working hard to foster it and build it and try and make a connection with each of them during each of your sessions. Okay, so there are your 7 steps. So in the summary, we're looking to have high energy. You should be bouncing off the walls. Communication, use tone and pitch to your advantage. All right, really emphasize the starts and the stops and the keep your chest up or keep going, the motivational cues. If you don't, they zone out to what your cues are if you're constantly just working at that same tone. Structure, make sure that your session flows. Make sure that you've got a structure and how you warm them up, deliver the session, or take them through it, and then, of course, see them out at the other end. Know your exercises inside out. The how, when, right? I should have what there, and where. So if you don't know them, then it comes across in the session as well, because you're left going, oh, my client can't do that one, not sure what I'm going to give them instead. Or you might not be sure on the cues. Speaking of which, number 5, use cueing to show you're present and engaged. In other words, don't stop talking. Stay involved, stay focused during your session. Don't be a statue, right? Be on the move constantly, and of course, as I just talked about, you got to mingle before and after. Get involved with your members, get to know them a bit better, especially if they're obviously new. You might want to foster that a little bit more and give them more time than some of your long-standing members. All right, I'll do a Q&A at the end, so if you've got any questions, write them down, hang on to them, and we can go through them at the end of this presentation. Second major point we want to talk about here, of course, is the designing of your sessions. And there's a few aspects here that I want to talk about, but this is a nutshell of what we do. Your delivery and your style of delivery is always going to differ from individual to individual, and it's something that, like any skill, just needs to be worked on. Right? Your client, for the most part, is paying for this. How well you can design a session for them. So it's pretty critical. 4 steps that I'm going to give you today, right? And is primarily revolving around the point of what I've got here, knowing the line that divides a challenging circuit, and of course I'm using circuit as a general term, doesn't always have to be a circuit. So challenging circuit so I should start that again. Knowing the line that divides a challenging circuit from an unachievable one is the key to delivering effective or inspiring circuits. So by that, I mean there's a very fine line that divides challenging yet realistic to over the top, push them a little bit too hard, and now my client's walking out the door feeling like they're a bit flat because they didn't quite finish or meet what you asked of them during that session. So the steps I give you today will help you to not only make sure that doesn't happen, but ensure that your sessions are focused towards the type of clients that you want to work with. Because that's the other critical point here as well. We want to try and design sessions that are extremely well tailored to those particular individuals. All right, so step number 1 is obviously knowing the amount of stress that each type of session brings to your client. Now I've got old mate here who's doing some sprint intervals on a track. Now what are the stresses of whatever distance he's running Is he doing 200s, 100s, 50s, 20s, 10s, or 5s? With reference to obviously meter sprints. Right? And where does that fit into the experience level, my conditioning level of my clientele? What would they be able to manage? What couldn't they manage? Right? How well you know that, and this, for the most part, I have to say, guys, is based on personal experience. If you haven't done sprint intervals, there's no point in trying to prescribe them because you won't know what that experience is. Right? But if you have done circuits, for example, or you focus primarily on strength circuits or strongman training, then I would hope you know what the influences are and what the type of stresses are that they bring. So an example I can give you here, if you're going to do small group PT in a strength setting, and you're going to do primarily strength circuits, which are obviously quite popular, right, what would be a typical format for a beginner, intermediate, experience level client? So by there you can see left column, I've got 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 plus. 0 to 6, right? 4 exercises done back to back with no rest, using a combination of body weight, low weight. How many sets could they manage? Dependent on exercises, of course, and rep numbers, but you're looking at 4 to 5 sets. How much recovery are they typically going to need? You're normally looking at a work to rest ratio of 1 to 1.5. They're coming to you deconditioned with 0 cardiovascular base. So they're going to need that 1 to 1, at least, if not 1.5. Intermediate, you can take it up another one. Give them 5 movements. You can go 5 sets rather than 4, and that recovery can just come down just a tad. And of course, experience goes up 1 again, so it's 6 and a 6. Now, bearing in mind 12 plus, depending on the type of exercise you prescribe, I would give most PTs 6 and 6, which is more extreme, more high level. Right, to give you an idea. So this is sort of what I'm talking about by knowing your stresses inside out of the type of sessions you are trying to prescribe in whatever niche area you want to work in. Right, so that way when you rock up and you design your session, you know that it's going to be, they're going to fall within the category of 0 to 6 months because you've done your assessment with them, and that's going to be challenging yet realistic for them to do. Right, so know them, please. Number 2, within any sort of delivery, I talked earlier on about regressions and progressions. You need to have an extraordinary vocab, exercise vocab. And this isn't just for small group PT, this transfers right across the board to one-on-ones and any other type of PT you might be doing. But the better your exercise vocab is, the better you can tailor for your individual needs of your clients and your small group. Now, I've used the figure there of 300 to 400 exercises, and I'm sorry to say it, but that's not an exaggeration. Right? So when I say 300 or 400, I mean based off your 7 primal movements, so squat, lunge, push, pull, gait, bend, rotation, 300 to 400 movements and variations of those primary. So if you've got a squat, which we'll talk about in a second, everything from a squat against a wall, which I'm not a massive fan of anyway, but we'll use an example, right through to a pistol squat. How many variations can you come up with? Using various toys, using various environments, etc., etc., etc. By having that vocab, it allows you to confidently and comfortably prescribe the sessions that are always going to challenge, but not take them too far. If you don't know too many regressions from a pistol squat, then you might go a single leg box squat up to a pistol squat, and of course, that's too big a jump. You need more smaller progressions or regressions from the pistol, baby stepping stones, so the client walks out saying, that was amazing. right? I used to be able to do a box squat, single leg box squat, and now I can do a single leg on a TRX, for example. It's a very basic progression, right? Without feeling like, oh no, I tried a pistol again and I couldn't do it. Okay, so work on them. A drill I used to do in my younger years, and I don't know, maybe I was just bored, I don't know, but I was definitely curious about it. So what I used to do was grab some paper and just write down as many exercises as I possibly could. And I would differ it each time I did it. So the first time I would do it just based on movement patterns. How many squat variations do I know? How many pushes do I know? And other days when I used to do it, I would try it based on equipment. How many med ball exercises do I know? And obviously you can go through all the movement patterns. But it gives you a good idea or a sense of where you're at with that regression and progression game. And it comes in time with skills and experience, of course, as well. And the final note I'll just put on that is that figure is based on free weights. So take machines out of it because they don't count. Right? I'd give you bands and cables, but that's as close to a machine as I would say for that number of exercises. Now, of course, here I've just got a basic example of what I'm referring to. So there's 20 movements going from a bodyweight squat through to a pistol, and an idea of what that might look like. But again, it's not hugely important. Okay, number 3, develop your service to match the needs of your niche. So let's talk about small group options for a start, and this will put this in context a little bit more for you. In reference to your small group PT, right, John's small group personal training service just won't cut it. You need to have an area or a type of small group training that you want to focus on. Obviously one that you've got a high skill set in is a good start. But whether that's strongman, whether that's mums and bubs or postnatal, whether that's a strength club, whether that's cardio or a running club or whatever it may be, but you need to have your service niche down. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have multiple. So you might have, 10:30 in the morning as a filler, a mums and bubs small group PT service. Yet in your afternoon shifts or evening and peak hour, that's where you might have a small group PT session based on general needs. So body transformation, small group type service, which would be, of course, for the most part, based around your high intensity circuits and the likes of. All right. Compare that to the idea of a strength club that I said before, where you would literally write 6-week blocks out for your strength club, and they would come in and follow the program, and you literally just walk the floor, making sure that they're not breaking themselves as they go through the movements. That there is completely different as a service to circuit, which of course is all about primarily what we've talked about today. So the first point is make sure that you develop your service to match the exact needs. There's no point in giving a strongman a cardio circuit. He'll be gone in seconds. He'll have no interest in that. But additionally to that, make sure that you have additional services within your business. And this is about as close as we talk about from the business side of your small group PT, but I think it's pretty important, so I've put it in. What additional services would your niche welcome, right? What would make you stand out from the crowd and go, yep, this service is amazing. So for example, with a strength club again, if we take that as an example, let's say my niche is middle-aged men. I have a bear gut. I used to play footy. I'm just looking for a bit of a boys' club that I've lost over the years because I'm now a family man, but I want to do something a couple of times a week. Well, of course, they once every 6 weeks would really appreciate going to play some rebound volleyball with a few beers on a Saturday afternoon, for example. And you might do that in addition to a session. It's obviously you can do a beach session at the local rebound beach volleyball, and then follow that with a few games and a few drinks afterwards. So as far as additional services go, that's sort of what I'm referring to. A training Bible on entry to your program. So your training Bible would include, it would be a 40 or 50 page bound document that has extra workouts, it has smoothie tips, it has stretching sessions, it has whatever you need to include that your niche is after. Right, so that's what I mean by value adds as part of your service. And the last point here regarding the design of your session is you need to make sure that you cater for both. And this again not only comes back to small group PT, but also all forms of PT. And it's hard, matching the wants and needs of your clients is really difficult. Trying to find a happy medium and a balance between the two. They come to us primarily either wanting aesthetics, and if they're half switched on, they might say a bit of functionality. I want to be able to move better. I want to be able to keep up with my 5-year-old. Great. Right, well, that obviously falls into their needs and what I'm referring to here. They're desk jockeys. Right, they generally come with imbalances and structural problems. Now, of course, the fallout of not addressing their needs, and they don't know this yet because they might not be, currently present with any pain, but it's certainly there, and that is, right, those hip flexors will keep getting tighter and tighter because you've prescribed them too many burpees into V-sits, into whatever, right? Where, yes, okay, they might be getting a bit fitter, yes, they might be getting a bit stronger, but the aches and pains never leave. And then, of course, over time, it just becomes a revolving door of clients because after that initial period, that grace period, the honeymoon, they realize that the essence of their movement isn't improving, and they just don't get the full-term results that they're looking for. All right, so it's a happy medium between giving them their wants, body weight loss, a bit stronger, etc. Sorry, body fat loss, etc. And then catering for what you know they need as well. And an example here I've given you, if I go, let's call this an outdoor circuit. I've got not quite a small group, but I'll say 10 individuals or even higher. And so I've got 10 stations and they're going 30 on, 30 off. So they're partnered up. So technically I've got up to 20 people here. And if you go through the right-hand column, right, I've got full body posterior. Pecs obviously will fold them in half, but into a T-raise. So scapular stability, posterior chain focus. Right, legs, cardio, much of a much, you need to have them in. Right. Active rest becomes another posterior chain-based movements, which is obviously the Supermans. I have burpees in there, which I'll call an anterior focus, which isn't so great. But then, of course, I'm straight back into TRX inverted rows or bungee rows for posterior chain focus, scapular retraction. Again, legs, cardio, and back into another posterior chain. So ensuring that the exercises I select are primarily around opening up, stabilizing, making sure that they are going to get strong in the right areas. I'm not going to overemphasize internal rotators, hip flexors, quadriceps, the likes of, which I know are already bound up, tight, neurally overactive already. And just getting savvy with how I program it. So they're going to get their wants, they're going to get their heart rate, they're going to get the happy hormones that go with the type of session. And I'm happy because the structure of my session also mirrors what their needs are. So that's a very basic example there. in reference to if you don't just provide circuits to your session, if you actually provide, so if we go back to the Strength Club example again, if you are writing out 4-week block programs and you're just following them around the gym, making sure they're doing it, well, you're even in an even better position to be able to influence those needs, because you can fold into your program some mobility, some activation stuff into that program as such as well, without them caring too much, because they still get to do their heavy squats or whatever it may be. So it's easier than a circuit, but that's how you would do it for a circuit. All right, so in summary, number 2 here, all right, we obviously know the type and the amount of stress each type of training session brings. So I gave you the example of the strength circuit formats where exercises are done back to back with no rest. Beginner would use 4, intermediate 5, advanced 6, and of course then you've got to lean on your sets and reps, and of course your recovery time on that as well. Regressions and progressions. The better you know them, the better you can cater for your client and your niche. All right? The better the chances that they will walk out going, wow, I really saw some progression in what I can do now. Or so you got a better chance of that happening than, of course, the fallout being, yeah, the progression that he gave me was way too advanced and I couldn't do it. And I'm a bit bummed about that. So it's the mindset thing and motivation. Right? Ensure your sessions are directly aligned to your niche and you cater for them. I gave the example of, well, you wouldn't give cardio sessions to a strongman, right? But there's more subtle examples of that as well. Right? So the better your training methodologies and philosophies are, and the more in depth you know them, right, the better you can align them to your niche, because you're highly specific in what you're training. Cater for the needs and wants. Don't just cater for the wants, right? Because they will break, guaranteed. Right? Just don't cater for the needs, because they will leave you. They don't see the full value yet. Right? If I came up to my client that's got some slight kyphotic issues through the shoulders and the thoracic and said, right, no, I'm sorry, you can't join my small group PT yet because you have to do 8 weeks of corrective exercise, they're going to go, well, see you later. I'll go to someone else. This is the unfortunate reality of the market, right, and what they want. So as much as I believe that's what they actually need to do, right, you need to find a way to cater for both. All right. So the final point here I wanted to talk about was variety of movements. And obviously we've touched on progressions and regressions. And I wanted to explain a little more detail about how that actually affects your service and your ability to maintain good retention rates, referrals, and of course longevity in getting a good $1 or $2 out of your small group PT. And the 3 key areas I wanted to talk about was the fact that a variety of movement throughout a session, it sends your program or your service upwardly towards a more of a holistic type program. It improves physical adaptation rates. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second as well. And of course, motivation, well, that's a bit of a no-brainer from our perspective, not just for their own training, but our clients' training as well. And again, I'll go into that in more depth. So when I say holistically trained, or when you have a high variety of exercises that you use within your training sessions day to day, this can come from changing up your methodologies, right, your philosophies, and your exercises, which obviously what we're referring to originally. So methodologies and philosophies, we're talking about mixing up how you present the exercises. So are you going to use drop sets, supersets, trisets, giant sets, change your tempo, etc., etc. Right? That in itself can obviously come as a form of variety. And the beauty of mixing up your exercises, of course, is you come from different perspectives. You're training, because you train the body a little more holistically, you create more of an athletic feel to your client and your service. Because not only are you working their, obviously, their strength, but you're working their stability, that you're working their power, you're working their muscular endurance, etc., etc. Now, of course, these all come in blocks of training, I understand that, but if you're in a circuit format, there's room to stretch those boundaries. And of course, the fallout, or the positive fallout, of course, of having a more athletic and more holistic based type of training model service is your clients become more satisfied because of the way they can move. They generally can move better than someone that sits just with one or two training realms and a similar set of exercises, which of course leads to referrals coming your way because of satisfied clients. That's the key point there. Improvements in adaptation via variation. So research has shown us that with untrained individuals or amateur lifters, right, varying the movement over overload principles actually gets you greater results. It stresses the nervous system out in a better way and more efficiently, which of course skyrockets results quicker. So you get greater results. And this has come in a couple of studies I've read now where they compare, so you take two groups, for example, and one group vary the movements they do each block, and one group only varies their training, their overload principles. So they might come up a few percentages in your RM, you might drop the time, for example. Right? What they found, of course, was that varying the movements was far more effective than varying just the overload principle. Better, faster results, ecstatic clients, greater retention and referrals. Okay, goes without saying. It's pretty important, but that comes, being able to do that well, comes back to your exercise vocab, which I kept harping on about earlier on. Motivation. Right? So there's something I hear time and time again from my small groups is that they love turning up, training session inside out, week in, week out, sorry, and not knowing what they're going to do. They love the fact that they're going to get something new, exciting. Right? Doesn't mean that every session has a new set of exercises that they've never done before. I might throw one new exercise in there that they haven't done before. But for the most part, whether it's the training methodology, the philosophy, or the series of exercises, right, the format is virtually brand new to them. Especially for my circuits anyway. My strength clubs, for example, obviously they were off a structured program. But every 4 weeks, that will completely change as well. Different focus, different phase, etc., etc. And that, I can't tell you how well that influences the overall success of my business model, because it just keeps them coming back. The retention rate is so much higher than, you know, I talk about, this is a random story, but my father-in-law, who does a boxing class religiously up in Mackay, I asked him about, you know, his experience and what he does, and he says, I box and do virtually the same routines week in, week out with a trainer. And she might vary the shuttle routine a little bit. And she wonders why her numbers are dropping off. It's the same thing. I mean, she obviously focuses on small group PT from a boxing perspective, but you need to vary it, right? It's the same thing week in, week out, just a few minor changes here and there, maybe a few different uppercuts variations, but sorry, it just doesn't work. So you need to keep varying it. Give them that spice that they're looking for. All right. Now, with that in mind, of course, I wanted to talk to you guys about a summary of this, but then also my bands as well. So in summary of the information I've given you, if you're looking to sustain a profitable small group service, then you need to remember that don't ever deliver a PT session like this guy would, right? Flat as a tack, disinterested, stone cold face, all of the above that I mentioned, those 7 steps for your delivery. Keep them all in mind, make sure you got them. If you tick all those boxes, great, right? You're already halfway there in delivering a service that's unforgettable, sorry. Design challenging yet realistic programs, right? That are not only challenging yet realistic, but they cater for your needs of your client. Don't just focus on the wants because you'll break them. Just don't focus on the needs because you'll lose them through unseen value, no perceived value. And my final point around all this was, of course, variety. It is the spice of life, but it is also the secret to a successful PT, small group PT business. Clients love coming in and not knowing what they're going to get, having some variation in their life, simply because so many other portions of their life is regimented. There is so much structure. If there's one aspect of their life they can come in and get some awesome variation, then brilliant, sign me up. Now, of course, as I mentioned to you just before, these guys I've been working on for a number of years now, and these are all based on, I was inspired by JC Santana, who is an American-based strength conditioning coach, and his bands over there, he's done very well with his Predator bands, and there's a massive need for it in the market. So the last 3 years I've been working on these bands, and the reason why I want to bring it up with you guys is because it gives you that variation that you're looking for. The amount of range you can do with these is incredible. So everything from obviously functional training, circuits, power training, general strength, hypertrophy and corrective exercise. The bands cover a fair range of scope when it comes to training philosophies, methodologies, and exercises. So they are, in fact, the ultimate small group PT tool. They're not the be-all and end-all. I never try and promote them as that, but they're a fantastic addition to your service and what you do. Right. The specs are also good. They back up the quality aspect of these bands as well. So 60 pounds per band. So they're heavy. I struggle doing 3 bands for presses, right? But you can obviously take 2 off, and you've got 1 that's perfect for your beginner clients as well. Right. They deliver you the variety, the motivation, intensity, and excitement that you need. Right. The regressions and progressions are there. The bands provide them as well. Right. Improvements in skill set. Your exercise vocab goes through the roof, and of course, it's efficient in small spaces. I've sold a lot of sets and people who work in box clubs, so 24/7 clubs, and there's no space. Right? It's very effective there as well. It's just tight, run a post, and away you go. And of course, outdoor as well allows you to get that posterior chain, which is so difficult with outdoor training. You end up just following them in half because so much of the movements you prescribe are obviously in a push-up based position or leg dominant. So highly effective from there. The bands come with 100 free exercises, train templates across the 5 paradigms, and of course there's a workout category there as well to give you examples of what they do. So as far as tying into small group, obviously the bands are a fundamental aspect of my service and what I do. And look, I've found over the years they've done amazing things, so it's well worth it. I am just launching them here in Australia this week, actually. So I've got a bit of a buy and save deal going here, 15% off, which equates to obviously about $15 because they retail for 100. This includes the exercise and videos as well. It's included, and it'll go through till Friday night. So if you're keen, please feel free to jump on that. And look, that pretty much concludes this webinar. I hope you got a lot from it. The information I said was all definitely based on the service or delivery of your small group PT, and I hope that there was plenty of information there. If you've got any questions, I'm certainly going to hang around for the next 5-10 minutes, and I hope that I can answer any of that for you guys. So stick around if there's something you might want to hear about, and we can go from there.